Welcome, old viewers and new viewers, to another episode of The Dancing Negotiator with Dr. Cheryl Okoli, DHA. This is the show where you learn all about conflict and its resolution strategies, the what, the why, the when, the where, the who. Evidence-based frameworks I introduce as an example, my original 5 A's of conflict resolution, which you can find and learn more about from my book, which is available on Amazon and more shops. I like to reserve the third Friday of each month for story time, which is an analysis of a movie, drama, event, what went wrong or what could have been done better. And last but not least, I reserve the last Friday of each month to have a guest. Now, this guest may or may not be an expert in conflict resolution, but I might have something of value that is pertinent to the theme of the month or that particular episode. This month is a little bit different, as in next week, our panel of guests will be represented by the theme of this month, which is all about the generation gap theory. So I'll have different guests representing the different generations as we talk about generation gap theory and conflict in the workplace. So welcome. Today is story time. So today I'm going to do things a little bit different in the sense that I'll be talking about a collage of movies. And not just any movies, a collage of animated movies, and talk about some complex situation. So I thought I'll make things a little bit light this month. After all, July is known for holiday. People are mingling with their families. And this is something that everyone in the family can watch and hopefully glean some pearls from. I found that the movies I'm going to present are actually my favorites. Well, some of my favorite animated movies. And it's very interesting how you'll be surprised how much you can learn from animation. But first and foremost, I would like to ask you this question. Are you right or left brained? Are you more logical slash analytical or leaning on the other side of creativity and artistic? Well, the answer to that may suggest or explain if you do like animations or not versus the good old-fashioned cartoons. And when I say good old-fashioned cartoons, I'm talking about back in the day, things like Popeye, um, Tom and Jerry, Calvin and Hobbes, etc. But the interesting thing is that animation is viewed by people across the generations. Some might think that it's only those leaning towards a generation X or Y or Z might be more involved or interested in animation. But believe it or not, I had a conversation with a lady who's a baby boomer. On her flight, she actually watched an animated movie called Encanto, which happens to be one of the movies I'll feature here in our discussion. So without much ado, let me share my screen with you to give you a visual of the different movies we're going to talk about. So I mentioned that these are going to be 3 of my favorites. So I'll have lots of favorites, but these particular ones are the ones I want to showcase. So the very first one is my favorite movie of all time called The Incredibles. And I do hope you can see my screen, but Incredibles is this one right here. And it's basically about a family. And we have Mr. Incredible, his wife, who is Mrs. Incredible. And then you have the children, Mr. Incredible, his wife, the 3 children, Violet, Dash, and Jack Jack. We're going to delve into great detail about each of their characteristics. The second movie is Happy Feet. Main character is Mumble over here, and then Gloria. And last but not least, we have Encanto, and I represent Encanto with a character from the movie called Bruno. So I'm going to ask you a question. If you are incredible in the workplace, for instance, is anything wrong? Is it wrong to dash around and strut your stuff? Is it wrong to be incredible in the workplace? Well, some might say, it depends on how you're portraying being wrong. Is it something you're flaunting? Are you overly confident and displaying more of arrogance? Well, that could be a problem because it might be perceived wrongly by your employees and colleagues, right? But what about if you truly are incredible? There's nothing wrong in excelling, striving for excellence. But then again, sometimes when one is ambitious, incredible, there comes along the naysayers. They'll try to just pop your bubble, if you will, or your balloon. So when that happens, what do you do? Do you have a happy place you go to? And by that, I mean, what do you do to cope with stressors when you're deflated in the workplace? Well, for me personally, I have my happy feet. I have two favorite things. Well, one is my spiritual care, and then happy feet, dancing for sure. So what is that happy place you go to? Or where is that happy place you go to? Hopefully it's healthy. I know in the last episode I talked about finding what makes your heart soar and doing it. So hopefully what makes your heart soar, your happy place are healthy coping mechanisms. Okay. And last but not least, when there's stressors in the workplace, and you notice people are having a hard time not talking about Bruno. They're like, who is that metaphorical Bruno? Why don't people talk about this character or this individual? What is it so special about him that people don't want to talk about? Well, let us delve right in as we talk about the different characters in the movies, starting first and foremost with The Incredibles. Well, first and foremost, why do I love this movie? I love this movie because of the teamwork displayed by all members of the family in spite of their strengths, weaknesses, and fears. So with each character, with The Incredibles, Mr. Incredible, his strength is literally his strength. He's very strong and he can move things, which is awesome. His wife, well, she had an identity before she became Mrs. Incredible. Her identity was Elastigirl. So her strength is that she can basically stretch all her limbs and other body parts without incurring any injury or pain. So what does that tell you? Before you became an employee of an organization, before you became the president, CEO, you always had an identity. Hopefully you don't lose it when you get married or when you become an employee of an organization or the head of the organization and so forth, or prime minister or the queen. Hopefully you don't lose inherently of who you are. So Elastigirl, even though she was well known prior to marrying Mr. Incredible and becoming Mrs. Incredible, she was well known and she knew her identity and function in it. And then the children now, the first one, Violet, her strength is that she's invisible. Not invincible, but invisible. Not so much as in no one talks to her, but literally she can disappear when she needs to. And then we have Dash, as the name implies, maybe you didn't catch that. He's known for his speed. He can run away from circumstances when there's danger, or he can use his speed to get things on his side, if you will, for mischief at times. Okay. And then there's Jack the baby. Initially, his strength was not apparent. No one really knew what his strength was, but it only manifested when he was in danger. And it basically takes the form of shape shifting, if you will. Now, some people might say, is it right? Or I don't really like shape shifting. Well, it depends on people and what they want, but I don't necessarily like the shape-shifting aspect of things, but that's basically what his strength is or was, if you will. Now, one thing I want to highlight about this movie is, as the name implies, they're Incredibles because they all have superpowers. They lived in a society whereby supers, which is their nicknames, walked around. However, there came a point in time whereby there was a mandate that says no more superhero heroes' abilities to be displayed. Why? It's kind of funny and not too funny why that mandate was passed. So one of the incidences was Mr. Incredible was at a point whereby he noticed a man who was trying to take his life, commit suicide. He wanted to jump off a building. Mr. Incredible, being a superhero and being altruistic, caught him in time, basically broke his fall, but the man got angry. He did suffer from broken bones, but he filed a lawsuit. Why? Because he's like, well, he interfered in my choices of wanting to take my life. Now, that movie, believe it or not, this movie brings up the whole Good Samaritan law. So my question is, what are the Good Samaritan laws? Do you know what they are in your city, province, state, nation? Are they active? So obviously, sadly for Mr. Incredible, this Good Samaritan law did not apply to him. As a result of that incident and other incidents of other superheroes going to the rescue of people and inadvertently damage is done, this mandate was passed, superheroes went underground. Sometimes they had to go to witness protection. So as a result of this, poor Mr. Incredible had to take a normal job like the rest of society. And what was this normal job that he took? He ended up being an insurance broker or agent in an office. So you can imagine someone who's used to being very active, helping, delivering mankind. Here is quote unquote stuck in this office, not doing what he likes. He's gained so much weight. And he does his job the best that he can. He has an altruistic heart. So basically, trying to make sure that his clients do not pay as much as it pay more than they have to. He knows all the loopholes and he would warn them or guide them through them all. His boss was not necessarily happy about that, thought, oh no, you should be making us money, not chasing people away. There came a point in time whereby Mr. Incredible had just had it. He was done. And I basically placed his hand on his boss in a way he should not have, in an aggressive manner. And let's just say the whole office realized there's no way any normal person with normal strength would basically hit the boss like that. Let's just say he went through the office to the other side of the hallway, smashed into the wall. As a result of that, he and his family had to go underground because their identity has or have been blown. Now, when this happens, of course, his family is not happy, but this is what happens. In due time, he gets an offer from an organization who used to provide jobs to supers. He's obviously excited by this offer. Again, now he's thinking, oh, now I can get back to what I used to do. In the course of events, he gets into trouble. His wife hears about this. She ends up going with the children to rescue him. In the course of that, there's an incident whereby he thinks his wife and children have been killed. He's totally deflated. Basically, to see he's losing his will to live. But unbeknownst to him, that was false information he received. They get reunited. They join as a family using their different strengths and weaknesses to pursue the bad guy. Now, with every superhero movie, there's usually a bad guy. And who was the main villain in this movie? Well, an individual by the name of Incredible. Now, this boy called himself Incredible. No one else called him that. He chose that name. Why? He idolized Mr. Incredible. He liked him. He wanted him to be his mentor, but Mr. Incredible basically said to him, I work alone. This poor boy took it as a slight, got angry, held onto resentment and bitterness, and when he grew up, changed his name from Incredible to Syndrome, and obviously he had some syndrome of some sort. What does that tell you? There might be people in your workplace who might be looking up to you. You may be the kind of person who works solo, regardless of what position it is in the workplace. Be careful how you might decline a desire or a request for someone to be your mentee. They might feel slighted, and worst case scenario, they might start harboring some resentment, and things may not go well for you. So think strongly and seriously about requests that you decline. And if you do decline, be gracious in how you convey to the individual. Now, one last scene or part in this movie I want to highlight that is very relevant to the workplace or families in general are gender differences. Now, I do realize instead of the word gender, I'm not talking about gender roles in this context, but male, female. Some people say use sex instead, but I'm going to use them interchangeably for the purpose of this episode and just use the word gender. So one interesting epiphany that was highlighted in this movie was the fact that I'd mentioned he thought he'd lost his family at one point in time. So after that, he became extremely protective, whereby there was a scene where there was a dangerous scene. He told his family to stay in the van. He's going to go take care of everything. The wife felt slighted by this and was like, I'm paraphrasing, I might chop liver. And he kept saying, I'm not strong enough. And she didn't understand what he meant by that. And she's like, what do you mean you're not strong enough? And then later he said, I cannot lose you again. And right there, you could see it was an aha moment for her, an epiphany, that what he was saying was he could not afford to lose them. He's not strong enough to lose his family, the emotional trauma that comes with that, given what he had experienced. So again, gender differences in the workplaces, maybe how you're communicating. Someone is conveying something, totally misconstrue what is being said, totally misunderstand what is being said. Perhaps gender differences are at play. There was an author by the names of Amjad and Dale Dar, 2017. They talked about cultural differences in the workplace and at home. Men tend to be more competitive. Women are more compromised and more leaning towards problem solving. Okay, so think about these things when conflict might arise. Now, what else I want to say before we go right into happy feet? I want to mention people might think again animation. Why should adults watch animation? Well, think about it. When animation is created, who takes the children to watch it? Adults, their parents. Who needs to be stimulated to sit through it? Yes, the children and the adults, but more so the adults, right? So some of the themes in these animations are not necessarily geared towards children. Children may not grasp them, but that's why I like animations, and especially these ones I've selected. So now going and talking about Happy Feet, the ones about the penguins. What I love about it, I love the fact that it illustrates the importance of being true to oneself. This movie is riddled with different themes about the different generations. There are two parts to it. And both this, so I'm just talking about part one of Happy Feet. And similarly, Incredibles has two parts, and I only talked about part one. Both of them were first created, introduced to the public about 10 years, over 10 years ago or so, okay? So with Happy Feet, I want to highlight a particular dance clip, which you can access on YouTube. You can just type in Boogie Wonderland Happy Feet and watch that clip. But I highly recommend you watch the entire movie. But that's just the dance clip I'm going to use for analysis, for conflict and resolution and insight for this episode. So the characters again were Mumble, a male, and Gloria, a female. So there comes a point in time for the penguin population, a rite of passage, if you will, in order for them to choose their mate. They need to have this sing-song thing going on, okay? But the problem with Mumble is that he cannot sing for the life of him. He cannot. Everyone else sings. He's obviously interested in Gloria, the penguin that I'd mentioned, but he cannot sing. She sings gloriously, just like her name, Gloria. But even though he couldn't sing, he had feet that could dance up a storm, tap dancing. So here was the dilemma. Does he stay true to himself or does he conform? So there's a social psychological concept of conformity versus acceptance. Conformity is basically you conform to what's laid out in front of you or what's asked of you, commanded of you. Acceptance is you accept something because of maybe it aligns with your internal values. Okay. So he decided not to conform, he decided to be true to himself. When he did try to conform, it did not go well for him. So here he is with Gloria doing their sing-song thing. He could not sing, instead he's tapping away. And in due time, Gloria sees what's happening. Even though she felt embarrassed, she decided to meet him halfway and sing to the tap of his feet, dancing. And it worked out perfectly. Now, one thing I want to mention about this movie and that clip, how it highlighted it to different generations. There's a point in time whereby the head of the penguin colony, very funny instance, he had a Scottish accent. And when Mumble was dancing and he was influencing other parties. Now, let's pause there for a second. What determines a leader? Is it your managerial style? Is it the effect you have, the influence you have, who's following you? I will say it's the influence and who's following you. When I say following you, I don't mean like in social media, how many followers you've got. That might apply, but that's not really the context I'm talking about. So here he is, dancing away. The rest of the colonies, that's dancing. Now, one thing you should understand is that they never dance. All they do is sing. He's the first one born this way and is dancing. So totally that's a different cultural shift, totally different norm. And here he is trying to get the different generations, not so much to conform to his dancing, but to get them on board to see how to do something totally different. So the head of the colony, who I'll mention The traditionalist did not like this. And he said words like, stop, stop, stop this moving nonsense. And I was like, for me being a dancer being called a moving nonsense. I was like, oh, no, 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 you did not. And here I am thinking, just stab me in the heart. And all of us dancers in the heart, he had to turn the handle when he said and called dancing an uprising. I had to chuckle, like that part cracks me up. But guess what? It was Mumble's dancing influenced the rest of his fellow penguins and colony to start dancing that saved their colony. You ask how? Well, humans came in, and due to pollution and some climate change things happening, this penguin colony was at risk of being eradicated. So when the humans arrived in their helicopter, all the penguins are there, and then one of the members said, Mumble, it's time for you to dance. He starts dancing, all of them start dancing, and I'll pause there. I don't know why, whenever I relate that, I get these goosebumps, but it's so powerful. So here they are all dancing away. That catches the attention of the humans because number one, they've never seen such a thing like this. They've never seen penguins dance, but a whole colony synchronized kind of dancing, that was amazing. They joined in the dance. And that saved the penguin population in the sense that humans realized we cannot let pollution enter and things like that. So in your workplace, in your community, in the society, in your nation, who is that one person that does something very differently? It goes against all the norms that people are used to. It's never been done before. But what if that change, intervention, paradigm shift is what changes or saves your organization, your community? What if? We should encourage people who are different but not causing harm. And that's how innovations happen. Okay. Now, let us talk about the last animation, last but not least, Encanto. So real quick, Encanto, what I love about that again is, actually, it features a South American family, Colombian to be specifically. So each member of the family has different gifts. So I'm using the word gifts, not strengths. They're like strengths, but I'm using the word gifts purposely because that's how it was described in the movie. So there was the oldest member, who is their grandma, their abuela. Her gift or strength was organizational, administrative, putting the family together, making sure things went well, to the point that some of them felt, oh my goodness, she drives us left, right, and center. But she, based on her past experiences, felt she needed to protect her family. Other giftings, Mirabelle was a young lookalike of hers. At the time, her gift was not apparent. She appeared to be the one who didn't have any gifts. Her siblings, cousins, aunties, and uncles had gifts. Like one had the ability to control the weather, another one had gifts to kind of like an animal whisperer, another one, Bruno, who no one wants to talk about, had this prophetic / he could see things in advance. He had visions. And because of this vision, people didn't really understand him. He became ostracized and boycotted because here he's telling them what's going to happen. It happens. They got scared of him. So now I'm going to ask you a question. What is it about a specific employee's strength or insight that makes you uncomfortable? Has this person been falsely and wrongfully ostracized because of a misunderstanding? Whose leadership and management style has been misunderstood? And could it be stemming from a place of fear? So this movie, I highly recommend you watch it. You're going to glean so many precious gems. So going back to Mirabelle, who I mentioned was a main character, that her gift wasn't apparent. At the very end of the movie, it was noted that her gift, which no one thought she had this trend of her first and foremost thought was always for the well-being of everybody. And she ended up being united and reuniting parties, having even Bruno come back into the family. So that was her special gift, which people didn't fully understand initially. So let's talk about some call to action steps. So they're along the lines of reflective questions. So we're going to reflect on them, and then I'll give you actual call to action steps. So first question, why don't you talk about that individual, kind of like we don't talk about Bruno from Encanto? which, by the way, that's become a song, and that song has gone viral across all generations, and people have their different adaptations and slants on it. Just type it in Google or YouTube, and you'll be amazed what pops up. Or watch the movie, okay? So why don't you talk about that individual that's kind of like a Bruno? Who is a Bruno? Where is your happy place to go to? Are you using your strengths in a way that is beneficial to all parties? You see, when we have strengths and giftings, they're not meant for us to just harbor them, hoard them for ourselves. They're meant to be used for your family, community, workplace, okay? That's why you were given those gifts. Sometimes I understand some people don't understand what their gifts and what their strengths are. That's why people do all this strengths test, skills assessment, and all that. But once you find it, use it to bless other people. Okay. Now, what realistic strategy is needed now in your workplace? Who is the key to unlock the need? Who is that individual, that issue, problem you have in your workplace or your family? Who amongst your employees have you overlooked or might be that key to unlock the solution? What leadership style is needed in your workplace and family? I know we didn't talk about the different leadership styles. We might talk about it in a future episode, but think about these questions. Now, call to action. I have a book on Amazon that I would like to invite you to purchase because it talks a little bit more about it elaborates further on the 5 A's of conflict resolution, the mnemonic that I mentioned that I have. So I invite you to actually have a look at it. So it is available, like I mentioned, on Amazon. And it's also, so Amazon, both American and Canadian. And it's also available on more shops for my European audience. Or if you have relatives or colleagues in Europe, you can purchase it there as well. Now, the other thing, as we draw to an end here shortly, I'd like to invite you to visit Win-Win Women, visit various hosts, and the call to action, I can give you a discount for any one of my consultation services, which I'll show you shortly, that has to do with administrative consultation as it pertains to strategic management, risk management, change management, you name it, policy reviews. If you need access to the conflict resolution coaching, I can help you with that. But the call to action I want you to do is this. I was a guest in one of the shows for another show host, fellow show host. And I'll make it easy for you. Her name is Emily Penroyd. Okay, so you need to go research what her show is. I was a guest on one of her shows, and I mentioned an animated character or characters in the show, in the context of talking about bullying in the workplace and in family. So in order to get a discount for any one of my services that's valid till the end of August, I would like you to tell me what character I mentioned in the show and specifically what animated movie the characters belong to so you can get discount. So you can find me at Cheryl, as an email me at cheryl@shalomeagleswings.care or visit my website at shalomeagleswings.care, okay, for any one of my services. So I invite you to join me next time. Come back, invite your friends, colleagues, family members next week for another episode of the Dancing Negotiator with Dr. Cheryl Okoli, DHA. And that way you can learn all about the different generation gaps theory as it pertains to conflict in the workplace. So I hope you can join me next time for that, okay? But before you leave, I always like to leave you with a thought. I want you to remember that you are needed in this world to be a solution. Be the best that you can and do not rob the world of a precious gem, you. Goodbye and have a splendid day.